Welcome back to the Tectonic Takes podcast. Devon and I are here to talk to you about a Cupset where we're starting to wonder, does it still count as an upset? Because for the third season in a row, the San Jose Earthquakes have lost to USL Championship opposition. And we'll just get right to it. How are you feeling the day after, Devon?
Well, I have COVID, so it's a different story. But adding to the game, did not make the COVID feel much better. Props to Sacramento. They're an undefeated team in USL Championship, and they fully deserved that game yesterday. So,
Correct.
well played to them. What are your thoughts, Ivan?
Yeah, on that note, not all USL Championship teams are created equal. Just like, if it's the FA Cup and let's say you're Manchester United, you're going up against Ipswich Town, that's probably a different quality of opponent than, say, Huddersfield Town, going based on last season. So it was always going to be a stronger challenge against Oakland Roots. And obviously it sucks. It was devastating in the way that the last two goals were scored in particular. And I think with a U.S. Open Cup match against a lower league opposition, you're not going to get too much praise if you win, but you're going to get destroyed if you lose. That's how it goes. We get to be a part of the discussion in a more hands-off sense when other teams suffer a cup set, just like Houston Dynamo and Real Salt Lake did in the previous round. Now it's currently our turn to bear the wrath of that. And we'll see. There's still 3 more U.S. Open Cup matches scheduled for today, Wednesday, May 22nd at the time of recording. And maybe Tampa Bay Rowdies and Phoenix Rising will add to that list of cup sets. But that's where we stand right now. And as always, we got to talk about the lineup because these decisions are always really important to see what kind of game we're going to have in this cup match. So we'll start with the San Jose Earthquakes lineup. We went with Jacob Jackson in goal, Paul Marie at right back, Oscar Verhoeven got the opportunity at left back, center back partnership of Daniel Mooney and Tanner Beeson, Alfredo Morales and Nico Shakiris as center midfielders, Useni Buda as a winger, along with Ben Kikanovic on the other wing, Jack Skane as a 10, and then Preston Judd up top. So the big goalkeeping decision was whether it was going to be Jackson, whether it was going to be Emi Ochoa. And before the match began, I was kind of hoping that Emi Ochoa would be able to follow up his performance, getting the first clean sheet of the season against Oakland Roots. But I think we can have no complaints with Jacob Jackson after this match. I think we just have so many great goalkeepers, it seems like. And very few of them have disappointed us in performances this season, despite the prevailing narrative of goalkeeping issues, Devon.
Definitely, and having an endless talent of goalkeepers is something that a lot of MLS teams would crave to have at this point. Especially like Portland Timbers or even Charlotte FC. I know they signed a ton of goalkeepers in the offseason. But the fact that we're able to rotate in confidence with 4 guys alone. Jackson last night saved our butt countless times with like saves of the season, saves of the tournament. I don't know how many times he made important saves, but everything, every single save we had was absolutely stunning and beautiful, and I'm really happy we picked him up.
Yeah, I think that he was a great addition based on that performance. Who knows when we'll get to see him play again, because it is tough to shake the pecking order. And it's really harsh to say that he's either the 4th or the 5th choice goalkeeper, but that's just how it is. Not many teams get to know what their 5th choice goalkeeper is, but it's unfortunate that we've missed 2 goalkeepers due to injury, that's how we've got to explore these depth options. But at least we know that one position is sorted. But now we got to talk about the defense, because once again, it's been a disappointing performance for the defense, but not disappointing in the sense that we got to see Oscar Verhoeven, who is a player that many fans have clamored for. And this is kind of something that I was expecting, because Jamar Ricketts got his opportunity and he struggled against Oakland. So what are your thoughts on Verhoeven getting his opportunity?
I really liked what I saw from Verhoeven. I know there are a lot of Quakes fans that will agree to that because, we ended up losing the game and the defense is a big part of conceding 4 goals. However, I thought, we didn't really concede many opportunities from Verhoeven's side of the field. And during the one-on-one scenarios when Sacramento attacking players were going at him, he held his ground well. He positioned himself in front of goal the way that Sacramento players can't really take any shots against him in a one-on-one scenario. I just thought it was a little unfair, and I don't know if Abram would agree to this or not, because I know he's been following Quakes 2 for a while. I just didn't know if it was fair to have Verhoeven in the back line surrounded by players who I would consider not as experienced first team starters. People like Rodriguez, people like Wilson, Espinosa, Hernan Lopez, people surrounding him that could have provided a better basis of coverage for him to understand what it's like to be with the first team. You know, it's no disrespect to Daniel Muni or other midfielders like Nico Tsikeris, because I've been hoping Nico could be a starter for a long time now, or even a Semi Buddha. You know, he's the one that made us move into the next round, in in the game versus Oakland. You know, I think it was nice to see Buddha start, but in the basis of Oscar Verhoeven, I think he needs to have someone like Christian Espinosa, or someone with a bigger first name basis to help him feel more comfortable in the lineup, and
think
I
we
think that was a
take
bit of an
away
issue there.
of the biggest and most valid critique of the lineup decision is, okay, for the first round matchup of the U.S. Open Cup that the Quakes participated in, we can understand a full rotation. But now all these players have gotten their feet wet. There's no one really, other than Verhoeven, who's like been denied an opportunity to play this season in a meaningful match with the first team. Now this is the point where we integrate a few more veterans here, and you can accommodate for that with either the Portland game or the Orlando game. I know it was tough for the Portland game because we were in it for so long, and that was also true for the Orlando game. But results aside, just thinking about if this is the competition that could most easily net us a trophy, the fewest amount of games, why don't we give some of these big players a little more rest here and there, so that way we can start them and play them 45 minutes at the beginning of the game or 60 minutes at the beginning of the game. And then we take them out and we can still have that mix of veterans, first team players, and subs throughout the game rather than having to bring them in as a get out of jail free card.
Absolutely. I think players like Pellegrino, people who are of older stature, more mature than most of the other teams with more experience. I mean, it would have been nice to have like Pele not start versus Orlando, come off and or come on as a 70th minute sub, only have 30 minutes experience or 30 minutes game time in Orlando, and then get the majority of the game time versus Sacramento. We need players like that. We need a healthy mix of a lineup. I did a little bit of research, quick research, and I went to the other MLS teams who also had matches last night, and they also had a decent healthy mix of integration of starters and substitution players who haven't had many chances to start in MLS. It's those types of situations that would lead us to a trophy, that would lead us to more opportunities to accelerate, our position into U.S. Open Cup qualification into the next rounds. We just didn't do that.
And that's usually the formula for success for teams that go far in cup competitions. The exception of if you designate your number 2 goalkeeper as the cup goalie, you do start to put in more and more of the first team players the deeper you get into the tournament, even if it's by round basis. And just looking at the Sacramento lineup, we were up against a really good goalkeeper for the USL Championship, and he performed well today, Daniel Vitiello. They had a solid back line of Jack Gurr, who was very impactful, Damian Viader, Jared Timmer, Lee Desmond, and then we had Shane Veit. And then a midfield trio of Rodrigo Lopez, who is very impressive. He is 36 years old and still he put in a lot of work in that game. Luis Fernandez, who of course with Quakes fans know very well, and Nick Ross. And then up top, we had Trevor Amon, and then very impressive first half in particular, Kieran Phillips on loan from Huddersfield Town. Standout players for me were obviously Fernandez and Phillips. Any thoughts on them or any other Sacramento Republic players?
Phillips is a big name for sure. Luis Felipe was my biggest concern heading into this game. Every single time that we played Sacramento since he left the Earthquakes, he has been an absolute threat to us. And he even scored, I think, in the last time we played them in the U.S. Open Cup. And yet again, he scored with, was it the go-ahead goal or the equalizer? I can't really remember. But either way, he did score in extra time, Luis Felipe, giving us, a bit of a shocker there at the end. I had thought that there could have been more of an effort to close down Luis Felipe. But as always, he's a threat, and he still poses as a continuous problem for not only the San Jose Earthquakes, but in USL in general.
Yeah, just to answer your question, he scored in the 106th minute, and then Herrera followed up with the 107th minute goal. And that was very clutch indeed coming off the bench. And just to put some context into Luis Felipe's journey professionally, he's still only 28 years old. He's always going to be a year older than Jackson Yule, but it's still interesting because those are the two midfielders in particular. You could throw Tommy Thompson in there as well, the position Swiss Army knife that he is, that these players more or less kind of had similar timelines. And we saw Jackson Yule, he had a bit more upside. He's been able to carve out a career consistently in MLS, but we see qualities in Luis Felipe that we feel like, maybe if a few things shook out differently, he could still be in this Quakes lineup. I feel like people need to give USL Championship players a little bit more credit because while there is still a reasonable gap between the two divisions, and the USL Championship is a little over a decade old, many of these clubs are less than a decade old, that they're still quality players here.
Definitely. And it's also one of those things where I'm gonna use today's Europa League game as an example where rotations are important for us. And one of the issues that Leverkusen experienced today was a lack of rotations from the last game 4 days ago to the match that they played today. There wasn't many rotations, and you can see in evidence in around the 55th minute that a lot of the Leverkusen players were tired, and it was hard to find good counterattacks because a lot of the players couldn't find that extra energy. And you could also see that in the Orlando game for the Earthquakes. It's tough to hear Luchi Gonzalez make, and I guess we could touch on this later. It's tough to hear Luchi Gonzalez make an excuse that it was difficult to have rotations for this game. But it's perfectly evident in all tiers of football, including the highest competition, and even the English, or not English, but European tier of football, that rotations are absolutely important.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even think of the word right now, but
how many times have we talked about the lack of depth, for example, and I feel like we don't test the depth enough. Like, you just run them in for the cup games, it's going to be really difficult.
Definitely. And that's one of the things that I think our Discord server agreed on last night, and that a lot of our players that played yesterday were actually considered, starting caliber players. People like Benji Kakanovic, who also had an assist in the first goal with Judd. Judd himself, who had 1 goal and 1 assist, assisting on the Hernan Lopez go-ahead goal in extra time. Both of those guys are starting caliber players, and they kind of proved it in the game last night. Not directly or consistently throughout the whole 90, but they made the numbers on the stat and score sheet to prove that they deserve more minutes. People like Jack Skane, Nico Sikeris, all excellent players. And I think there were just a considerable few individuals who were mentioned quite a few times in the server last night. I won't mention just yet. Kind of upsetting the scoreline.
Yeah, I think it would surprise many people to inform you, and granted, this is FootMob, so take it with a grain of salt, but the highest rated starting defender for the Earthquakes with a 6.7 was Tanner Beeson.
Oof. Not many fans would agree to that. I'm sure,
No,
there's people shaking their fists.
By 1.5 points for most fans, at least.
If not, at least is a good answer. I mean, So I went and looked back at the highlights, and Tanner Beeson was basically um,
Half a cup.
directly involved in all four of those goals,
Yeah.
especially the fourth one. And one of the dislikes that I have as a CB is when a player sticks out their leg and turns away from the play, not
No.
knowing what the striker or attacker may or may not do in the coming
Because they can
events.
fake it or something.
Exactly, yeah. And so when that happens, you kind of just hope and pray at that point for a ball to not go in the back of the net. And it's, yeah, those things like that where it's those little adjustments that make a huge key difference in a game in the 90 minutes. And I think it was the first or second goal where Tanner Beeson was defending a one-on-one scenario, and the Sacramento attacking player just basically walked around Beeson
Just
for a
running through.
exactly, yeah. Walked around him for a one-on-one opportunity against JJ. And, kudos to JJ for making all those saves, but he did not deserve those four goals conceded. And personally, in my opinion, Tanner Beeson was at fault for at minimum three of those goals.
Yeah, I think you trust more teams to by the point that Espinoza and Lopez did as much as they could off the bench. They each chipped in with a goal. They each chipped in with heroics and grand style. That at the 100-minute mark, you get to the half point of extra time. Is like, okay, I don't care if we're the top division team here. We'll park the bus. Just whatever you gotta do. Don't concede one goal, and they didn't. They conceded two.
Oh no.
It's like
Yeah,
when you wish for something and the genie twists the words, right?
right.
Oh,
Um it wasn't pretty.
no.
Um so you know, it's it's also concerning to me how for the last couple of months, Luchi Gonzalez in press conferences was discussing how serious he wanted to take the U.S. Open Cup, and
Yeah.
he made that evident in multiple press conferences, especially the one leading up to this game after Orlando City's post-game press conference. He wanted to take the U.S. Open Cup serious, um, but then we saw the lineup, and it was 100% a lineup change. Not one player from the Orlando lineup made it to the U.S. Open Cup lineup versus Sacramento Republic, and that's one of the biggest issues I have. I'd like to know your thoughts on that, though, Ivan.
I'll add that it's not like we were flying from Orlando. Like, I would understand that a little bit more if we were coming in from Florida and we changed 3 time zones. It was a home match against Orlando, and you drove 2 hours northeast. So it's less adjustment needed, and it should be able to bring in a few more players, at least those that started but didn't play 90 minutes, the ones you subbed off. That could be manageable there, in my opinion. Um, I do believe Lucha Gonzalez. I feel like he is straight up with us in the press conferences. At least we see his intentions. But I think somewhere along the line, it gets lost in translation and it's just not clicking. You can excuse a few of these freak results at the end of games, but it has become a pattern. I gave him the benefit of the doubt when someone added us on Twitter and was like, he cost us the Orlando game. And I'm like, okay, but what could Lucci done differently regarding the sequence of events from one end attacking to the other when Jacqueline ended up tapping in a deflection to give Orlando the win? But the fact is, once it happens enough times that you get associated with it, whether it's fair or not, that's your role as the manager. So it's tough. I don't have a solution for him, but that's why he's the coach. That hopefully he can find some solutions. But if there is a silver lining, it's the fact that there was a lot of weird circumstances surrounding both the Portland loss and the Orlando loss. The Sacramento one was the worst one for me, and it's not because it was against Sacramento, not because it was a cup set. Like, that was a legitimately good game. If we were neutrals, we would have thought that that was a top 5 U.S. Open Cup game ever. I am serious about that. It sucks to say because we were in the losing end of it, but if you take the bias out of it in terms of it was a negative result in the end, it was a very entertaining game. 7 goals. It was a really fun game and lots of twists and turns and good quality of goals in some cases. I think that with Austin, it's another remnant of a very bad result that went haywire. And I think it's a chance where we can make things right there. Uh, Slightly off topic, but so let's say Sacramento Republic and LAFC get matched up in the quarterfinals. We're rooting for Sacramento Republic, right, Devon?
I'm afraid to say yes. I'll be rooting for a close enough to Bay Area team to beat
NorCal.
LA. Yeah, NorCal team to beat
That's the
LA.
word for
Yeah,
it.
NorCal.
Yeah, and
But I mean,
LA has to go down.
yeah. But I did want to say, and maybe you can elaborate on this more. It kind of hurts a little more to lose the Sac, especially because both of us are Earthquakes and Oakland Root fans.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of history, especially once you get away from the feeder system that's San Jose and Sacramento Republic closely aligned. And of course, Tommy Thompson was one of our biggest prospects that he did play some games at Sacramento Republic. I think he ended up playing as many games for Sacramento Republic on loan as the 2016 marquee signing for Sacramento Republic, Carlton Cole of West Ham fame. So that was pretty interesting. The year before Didier Drogba came to the USL Championship to Phoenix Rising, uh, they had Carlton Cole for a hot minute. But I think that because they do face each other so often in the U.S. Open Cup, that does force that rivalry to happen a little bit more. And there is still those feelings will probably never go away unless USL Championship becomes a legitimate like 1A, 1B, or a alternate first division in the United States someday. That they were this close to becoming an MLS team, and not only that, but they could have been potentially the last MLS team to graduate, so to speak, from USL Championship and maintain their identity. They were well prepared to be from Sacramento Republic in the USL Championship to having that awesome name, Sacramento Republic, as part of the MLS family. And it fell through at the last minute. And now, instead, we're killing off San Diego Loyal to have San Diego FC. We're potentially killing off Indy 11, who are in the U.S. Open Cup still, to have who knows what kind of bland Indiana name they're going to have. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that, there's a couple of members in our Discord server who really like the Sacramento logo. And I
Yeah,
think it would have been nice to have a good rivalry, a NorCal rivalry that we can call our own instead of, kind of being that, and I hate to say it, that third wheel in the LA Derby now. You know,
right.
LA have their own two teams. They're about to get San Diego, and we're still stuck up here in NorCal, relying on LA Galaxy as our main rivals. It would have
Because we're
been it would have
MLS.
exactly, yeah. It would have been nice to have Sacramento Republic, and their outlying of their stadium would have been sick to have. Going to away games would have been much easier. Um, to have as their own parking lots, etc.
Yeah,
And to consider them an MLS caliber team, which I personally consider them as an MLS caliber team now. Like they can beat bottom feeders like New England Revolution and apparently even us.
yeah.
So they deserve an MLS spot. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, but
Or to
they're
legitimize a NorCal SoCal rivalry. Look at the Giants versus the Dodgers. The Giants had a sustained period of success for the early 2010s. The Warriors and the Lakers, both the Warriors and the Lakers found some success in the 2010s. Lakers on either end of the decade and the Warriors in the middle and slightly coincided. But aside from winning the Supporters Shield in 2012, San Jose Earthquakes didn't really have much success during the time of LA Galaxy's high point. They were winning MLS Cups in the early 2010s. And still, the Galaxy, because of, Darren Garber's rules partially, but still, they've been bringing in marquee player after marquee player after marquee player. And we've gotten some good players, sure, but we haven't been able to consistently compete at the MLS level like LA Galaxy, like a Seattle Sounders. So it's hard to make that rivalry level up to that next level of what El Tráfico has become, Seattle, Portland, and several other key rivalries, Cincinnati, Columbus, for example, because San Jose Earthquakes just haven't been able to step up their game consistently.
definitely, and also an emphasis on LA Galaxy's deep depth they have the depth to bring on substitutes and still make a considerable difference. Besides having Pooch and all those top name players that they have, we don't really have that. Our depth is Tanner Beeson and I don't kill me, Saz, Tommy Thompson
Mhm.
and other guys kind of like that, like Baldissimo, guys who we normally wouldn't play, that other top teams would have, that would come off the bench, and make a lasting impact for them. We don't have that. Um, Personally, I kind of wanted to say this earlier in the podcast, but I kind of forgot until now. It would be interesting to put Tanner Beeson on waivers and sign another center back, um, that would boost our defensive confidence in a way that we need in the coming 2/3 of the season.
I think you just look at the defensive record, and while the names are more promising and intriguing, you have to bring in someone else in to compete to maybe at least push them further. Not necessarily having to get clean sheets, because clean sheets are really hard to come by throughout the course of the season. But the rate that we're conceding 3 and 4 goals in each game is still very much not helping matters here. And just looking at the forward depth for LA Galaxy, as you mentioned, that even though they have Joseph Pink still currently injured, they have the likes of Dejan Joveljic, Diego Fagundes, Gabriel Peck, and Miguel Berry. So there's still some 4 quality options, 5 when Pink still is available. So that just further adds to your point, Devon.
Definitely. And now that we're coming up against a team, Austin FC, who also are missing considerable depth. They just went out and signed an attacker, from, I believe, Cameroon, if I remember correctly. But he's coming in, um, as a number 7, I believe, a dangerous attribution contribution, a dangerous contribution for Austin FC.
Looks like it's a former Red Star Belgrade player. It's the Ghanaian Osman Bukhari, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
Yes,
Ghana
Bakari.
International. Fair enough there. And of course, that is made possible partially because of Rigoni's release, which is a bit of a swing and a miss there for Austin, but it happens. Um, and yeah, I think that Austin, they wanted that win badly the last time we played them, because of that record that Quakes have. But even that, we can't rely on that anymore. So we got to regroup, and we have to figure out, is our best lineup, barring our goalkeeper situation, which can't be addressed right now, which doesn't have to be apparently because they all play well. I think that we still need to see them play together consistently a bit more, maybe without, cup games anymore. We can see them gel a bit more. And now you don't have fixture congestion. That's the penalty for losing a cup game. So that excuse is out the window for the time being until the next MLS midweek or the Leagues Cup tournament. So we didn't really talk about Carlos Grezzo, but I noticed that some people were praising his performance, at least compared to maybe some of his poor performances earlier this season. Do you feel like that was true, that Grezzo did all right?
I'm one of those believers that Carlos Grezzo has improved in performances, um, in games that Jackson Ewell is not standing side by side with him. I think
Oh,
that and I know it's a bit of a
wait
tectonic
for
take.
not to be here.
It's a bit of a tectonic take, I know, but I
Yes.
think I think Carlos Grezzo is a better performer with Nico Sikiris or Jack Skane or another midfielder alongside him in that 8 or 10, um, instead of Jackson Ewell. When he and Jackson Ewell are in the midfield pairing, there seems to be a lot of confusion as to who has the ball, whose ball is it. If the ball's passed between the two players, who's the one that's going to get it first? There's a lot of that confusion, and I can see a more confident Grezzo, without Jackson. So I'm not really sure how necessarily to analyze that, but that is one thing, that I noticed, in that it's difficult for Grezzo to have an impressive 6 performance when Ewell's in the lineup with him.
So sounds like you're advocating for the ninja star midfield options of, if we're looking at each of these five players, and the attackers included, as 5 points of a ninja star, we have Shakiris, Lopez, Ebobisse, Espinoza, and Pellegrino. You feel like those five, and then Grezzo as a holding midfielder, and then a usual back line of Acapo, Rodriguez, Wilson, and Vitor. That would be our strongest outfield lineup.
I think for the most part, I would also argue in favor of Alfredo starting over Grezzo right now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm with those fans. I don't. After all what I just said, I'm with those fans that Alfredo should definitely get some more play time over Grezzo because he's been more impressive. Um, but overall, I think Grezzo is our DP. There's no chance that John Fisher or this team is spending another couple $1 million on a six, because we've already made that transfer, that record transfer at the time we bought him of $3 million for Carlos Grezzo. I don't see anything happening to him. He hasn't done anything wrong necessarily to consider sending him on waivers. I think we're going to be stuck with him for a while. So um, I'll say that it's better to give Grezzo more time and chances, because I don't think we're going to see another six starting over him anytime soon.
Yeah. For me, I guess I feel like Alfredo Morales is more of a deep lying center midfielder than a full on defensive midfielder. But at this point, I could see him sliding in there, so that's fine. But I think that these next few weeks are really going to show what this team is capable of. My tectonic take is that while we're not going to rain on Sacramento Republic's parade, they can use this cup set as momentum to progress forward in the tournament. But I feel like you also have to earn being defeated as a cup set, because right now San Jose Earthquakes are still on that slide 3 seasons in a row where they've lost to lower league opposition. That until we can at least get knocked out by another MLS team, that we are very much the low tier of cup sets here. But hey, a cup set is a cup set. Congratulations to Sacramento Republic.
Definitely. Do you have any starting 11 thoughts going into this weekend's game versus Austin FC? Do you have any players in mind that you'd rather see over another, or
uh,
given that we've had a ton of game congestion in the last at least 7 days, what are your thoughts on the starting 11?
if everyone is good to go and feels okay after playing 90 to 120 minutes in this Tuesday, I think we just got to see who really wants to get this win back after some tough losses. So I want our best players if they're ready to go. But if things are not going our way and players are struggling or they're tired, then we make some quicker substitutions around the 60, 70th minute mark. So yeah, I kind of ran through my preferred lineup when I was asking you that question, but
Got it.
I think that yeah, there's still some competition for maybe some of the defensive line spots if the goals continue to be shipped in too often, and then maybe that defensive mid and holding midfielder spots. But at least our attacking players, they're fine, and our goalkeepers are good. It's just that area in between those two groups right now that we need a little bit more from, and that's the majority of the team. So that's a problem.
Right, for sure.
It's a
Um,
number.
do do we see Oscar Verhoeven starting or playing in other MLS games after his performance versus SAC?
Yes. So right now we have three really good fullback options. So there's only likely going to be room for either Verhoeven or Ricketts to be a fourth uh, defender. And just playing these substitute games, if you have nine on the bench, you like to have at least five of them be some combination of midfielders and attackers. You want one of them to be a goalkeeper. So that usually leaves three for the defenders. And I think Lucha Gonzalez right now trusts Beeson and Muni to be on the bench more than having a fourth defender, which would be a fullback behind Maurice. That's the difficult part right now. But I would like to see Verhoeven get another opportunity. And that's the difficult part. If you rely on only these cups to give players opportunities, you really do have to put in the right lineups to win these matches and to get another opportunity down the road.
Definitely. I agree with you.
Yeah. I apologize. We are already sad about the loss, and now I'm making people do math. I'm really not helping matters
I got to fill out my homework for tonight.
here. But even with the Earthquakes being in a bit of a downward moment here, I think there's still room for improvement this season. I'm not going to say that it's automatically disaster season in May, but I feel like we're maybe a month or 2 months away from this being yet another forgetful season. Was that fair?
I think so. And I was watching, the aftershock after the game performance, and there
Oh
was a
gosh,
prediction. There was a it was a
we
tough watch.
we just don't love the comment section sometimes.
It was a tough watch, but there was an argument in favor that if Lucci were to lose the next two games, versus Austin and versus New York City FC, we may see potentially the letting go of Luchi Gonzalez, considering that there's a 2 week window after the New York City game and the next game. So if there is a double loss, I know there's a bunch of Luchi outers out there. I hope they don't look forward to us losing games so Lucci can leave, but it's one more thing that they could potentially look forward to if we do lose those games.
Right. So let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, if 0 is he is super safe, and 10 being like start packing your office, how warm do you think Lucha Gonzalez's seat is? I think right now it's still at a 5, somewhere in the middle.
I'm with you. I think it's a 4 or 5,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 5, 6. Considering that he just got the 10 that he wanted for a double record transfer fee, I don't see our FO ownership kind of throwing him away after that. I see him getting a couple more months of coverage and chances.
Yeah,
Um,
because that has been a good transfer so far. Lopez has performed well in every game he's been in, and that's great. Maybe we just need to bring in, who knows how many players we will bring in, because usually not many in the middle of the season, but at least one or two, hopefully.
right, and it's only been recent since we've had Hernan Lopez. I think his first ever start was versus Oakland Roots, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
that was his first start, and
You know,
then he played the second half against LAFC prior.
right, and that was only what 3 games ago, 4 games ago.
It was this month.
It hasn't been that long since we've had Hernan Lopez.
Yeah, we
Usually
just
it
played
it
so many games that feels like longer.
it takes around 6 to 8 weeks, from my research, for a player to fully adjust and adapt to a team's kind of play style, and it takes that much time for other players who are already adapted to a play style to adapt to a new player's um, consistency and personal traits that Hernan Lopez will attribute to the team. I think it's going to take at least 2 or 3 more games for us to really hit our stride, and I'm gonna predict that we go on another 3 to 4 win game streak. Um, I don't know how many games we have until Leagues Cup, but I think we're gonna hit a 3 game win streak by the beginning of Leagues Cup.
Yeah, right now I'm only looking at these next two games before international break because so much can happen in terms of players going to their respective national teams, and then that can affect which players are available for our next opponents and ourselves.
Right. Yeah, international breaks definitely gonna is gonna throw us a curveball depending on who we get assigned to international teams.
But
We
it's a summer international break, which means, hey, if you want to watch soccer, then your options are that. And then there's also still going to be NWSL, USL Championship still. But you're going to get a healthy dose still with that international break.
That's true, and we do have Bay FC to keep our
Yeah.
eyes peeled on some more fun soccer, right?
Yeah, they had a very good win against San Diego.
That's true, yes. Although a lot of fans were looking forward to Alex Morgan play, she didn't play, but hey, Bay FC won.
Yeah, if you don't want to play Alex Morgan, then you lose. That's a pretty simple equation.
There you go, math solved.
Speaking of U.S. women's national team players or people associated with them at some point, we're still missing a Dom Dwyer in Oakland. We'll see whenever he shows up as well.
That's oh my god, that's true. I totally forgot he signed for Oakland Roots until yeah. He hasn't made an appearance, has he?
No, he still has not played either.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to his debut. Now that we've passed our game with Oakland, I can start rooting for Oakland again.
There we go. Welcome back to the Oakland team. Um, right now, I would say that confidence is probably the biggest issue for the Quakes if we're looking at immediate turnaround. But I want to say that there's at least a 60% chance we can get at least a draw against Austin. And I'll give them a 40% chance we can beat Austin. That's my final take as we start wrapping things up. How are you feeling about that Austin game?
I feel somewhat confident. I know the last 2 times we played Austin, I think we lost away, and then we drew. We drew at home last season, but we've always been Austin's nightmare, always since the start of when they entered MLS, except for the last 2 games.
That status.
Now that we have Mr. HHH, I think I think we can definitely make a severe threat to Austin FC this coming weekend.
Yeah, when Argentine midfield leaves this matchup, another returns, and they're on our side now. So that's going to be pretty interesting to see that game. We're really hoping things turn around. And let us know in the comments, is this still considered a cup set, or do the San Jose Earthquakes really need to find themselves a strong cup run in 2025? Or are we going to be having this conversation a year from now, and then we're like, maybe 2026?
Let's hear your tectonic takes down below in the comments.
Yes, thank you again, Devin, for joining us. Hope you feel better soon.
Thank you, Ivan. It's fun talking to you.
All right, go Quakes. Have a good one.
Quakes.